Right, today we're going to look at government intervention into the market. But first of all, I'll just go through this a little bit again, just to emphasise the problems with government intervention. Here we've got a product where the price equilibrium is here. That's when the market is functioning most efficiently, and then the government have decided to tax this product or service. So originally we see the consumer surplus is here and the producer surplus is here. That's the benefit they get, the welfare, the net benefit to the society. Then, if the government tax this revenue, obviously the government will get the benefit of this, but the price will go up here, and maybe the supplier will have to reduce their price to here to try to maintain a reasonable market. So if the big problem is if the price is there, the company will only want to produce this many at that price. What they're getting. Obviously what the consumer is paying is here, because with the tax they have to pay a much higher price. And here the consumer will only want that many, because the consumer surplus is much less, and so they'll want to buy much less than what could be provided. So the production will stop here, and that means this will be the dead weight loss. This means that the scarce resources available won't be being used. So that dead weight loss is showing that the scarce resources are not being used in their the most economic way, because the company will be producing much less than its possibility, the production possibility. So this is the problem, and here we have the new supply curve. That's price. There's this new supply curve that emerges, including the tax and everything. But really the company is only getting that, not this. Okay, so this is the problem. So it really does make a less optimum situation of the market. The scarce resource won't be being used to the maximum. But there does need to be government microeconomic intervention. We do sometimes need it when we have market failure. Market failure, what is it? It's when the free market doesn't make the best use of the scarce resources. So this is, we're not considering government intervention yet. We're seeing that the market hasn't made the best use of resources without government help, and this means that the government needs to intervene. It needs to do something, otherwise the market is not working to its optimum. Why isn't it not using making the best use of resources? Because in the price mechanism, it's not taking into account the costs and benefits that are necessary to produce or consume a product. So not all the costs and benefits are considered. We know there are negative and positive externalities that aren't being considered by those suppliers. Maybe this may be pollution, this may be, it's health, smoking and health, or it may be education. The positive externalities are not being considered because the market only considers the interests between the producer and the consumer, not the wider external reality. So, market failure situations. So maybe there would be a lack of public goods. We'll talk about that in a second. The underproduction of merit goods, the overconsumption of demerit goods, and the information failure. We've talked a little bit about this before, what is merit goods and demerit goods, and the public goods. But let's have a closer look. So, addressing the non-provision of public goods. So, public goods, we're thinking of street lighting, police, national defence, roads, flood controls, etc. And we know that these are goods that we consume collectively, and me consuming, the street lighting doesn't mean there's less for someone else. And the big problem with this is the free rider, so the person who doesn't pay and leaves everyone else to pay. And that means that it's not possible for the market to provide this good, because people just wouldn't pay, many wouldn't pay. So it must be provided by government spending and taxation, taken from taxation and spent by the government, and then made free. So that's one situation where we need government intervention. Also, they need to do something about the consumption of demerit goods, okay? Because these are overproduced. For example, smoking. If people smoke a lot, we end up spending a lot of money on health to save them from cancer or from other injuries they've caused. So we do find this is a market failure because it overproduces, and the government need to intervene to prevent this from happening, and they often do, in the form of taxation or information, put warnings on packets, etc. And in the long term, this will save money on health. So there's that, addressing the overproduction. And addressing the underconsumption of merit goods. Merit goods, again, we know there's an information failure. People don't realise they're so important, for example, like prevention of cancers or something, or education, etc. This means that the government needs to step in. Here we've got maybe we can imagine a health situation where the market would be like this, the price very high, and many would not spend the money on their preventing problems, vaccines, whatever. Maybe they take the risk. And the government knows they must provide, if they want to solve this market failure, they need to create this supply which is totally inelastic. They establish this is where the minimum provided for the citizen. So it's totally inelastic, and it will bring the price right down. Maybe you just pay a ticket or whatever you call it a little bit. But Italy is probably more down here, very cheap. And then, you can have, if the government fund all the health service, you can have a private service for rich people, which often hasn't got the provision, the quality that the public service would have. Often they haven't got the most up-to-date machines, but they've got lovely environments, carpets nice, maybe one room for you instead of being in a dormitory, etc. But normally, if the government do step in, like with education, it does draw resources from the private sector, like people, doctors, who want a permanent position, a very safe job, etc. They'll be drawn into the public sector. And then you've got, what I've just said. The government can also control prices in the market. So it can have a maximum price for something. Maybe I can think of the face mask during the pandemic. The government said cannot be more than a certain price, or, for example, rent control is quite famous in England to put a limit on rents, and this will create a problem for suppliers who, a certain price, they won't be able to satisfy all the demand. There'll be a big demand, so often there'll be shortages if you have a maximum price, and also could be a minimum price. Often farmers have minimum prices, can have minimum prices for very important foods like rice, etc., to maintain their income, to make sure they continue growing the food. But that again can have problems with overproduction. People won't want to buy so much if the prices are artificially high, and they'll produce too much. And often in Europe in the past we've produced too much food and had to throw lots away. When I was younger, we talked about the food mountains European bureaucracy was producing, because they were producing a lot of food that was too high priced and they couldn't sell it. So price controls.